Hi everyone, this is Adam for RealHomeRecording.com. In this video, I'll be reviewing 112 decibels Redline Equalizer. This is an incredibly flexible EQ that it doesn't really emulate classic equalizers, but it uses their EQ curves, which is what gets a lot of their sound, and combines a ton of them into one plugin. And I'll tell you what, it works really, really well. It made my older mixes sound like they've never sounded before. So let's get started with the review. The Redline Equalizer is an extremely flexible plugin. Its closest competitor is the Waves Hybrid EQ, which was the very first video I ever made on the RealHomeRecording.com YouTube channel. But Redline was released before Hybrid EQ, so don't think that this is a copyright plugin. Not at all. Equalizers, if you don't know, in simple terms, they allow people who are working with audio to shape the frequency makeup of a signal. Now, whether that's adding bass, cutting treble, scooping mid frequencies, whatever. Equalizers are an essential tool for audio engineering. How good an equalizer sounds, how easy it is to use, and how flexible it is to get the job done is what determines its quality. 112 decibels Redline EQ is available in RTAS, VST, and audio units formats. Installation went very smooth, except it took a while for it to find my VST directory. If 112 decibels would add an option to manually search prior to the automatic search, that'd be great, because it added an extra 20 to 30 seconds for the install, which, you know, I would have found that directory in 5 seconds. But it did find it, so kudos for that. So let's start at the top of this plugin. First, we have the bypass button. That's what it does, it bypasses. Oh, great thing I want to say before we start. Notice when I go over a control, a little tooltip pops up. Every little control, which is great. It makes this very, very easy to use without having to constantly refer back to the manual. Okay, moving on, we have the spectrum option. It's off by default. We have the dynamic control, which if you change this, actually, I'm not really sure what that does. I think it has to do with the dynamic EQ option over here. Yeah. Yep, that's exactly what it's about. So these two controls, dynamic EQ on the view and dynamic EQ, if this is off, then it doesn't even matter. If you keep it on, even if this is off, I think it eats up a little bit of CPU power. I usually have it off, but I think it's on by default. Auto gain. This is a very awesome feature. You've seen in previous Real Home Recording videos where I talk about lowering or boosting output levels while equalizing. And that's because when you're making changes to frequencies, you want to make sure that what you're hearing is tone and not loudness level. And this auto gain makeup is exactly what it says it is, which is, as I change this EQ, watch that change. Very, very cool. And how well does it work? It works pretty darn well. It doesn't work all the time. It's not 100%, bypass the EQ and it works well. But it's better than having to constantly go, oh, gotta change this, So I like to keep it on. It's a great little feature, and I wish more EQ plugins would have it and implement it the way that 112 decibels did. Okay, the next control is this, which is the website button. I rarely use that, but it's there if you need it. Input gain affects, obviously, the input volume, which the meter for that is over here. And then next we have our handle, which, yes, the first one is for the low pass filter, which if you look, an incredible range of points. I forget what the name, what the technical name of that is. The roll off, I guess, bandwidth maybe, but look at that, 6 decibels an octave to 48 decibels an octave. That's incredible. Usually I keep it either at 12 or 18, but it's very, very flexible. Next option is your first parametric equalizer handle, which you can also switch to be a shelving filter with this button down here. And you can click it and drag it up. If you Alt click, if you hold Alt and then click, it changes the Q. Very, very nifty feature. And then I believe it's Control bypasses it. Or no, Control resets it. Shift is actually what bypasses it. So if I'm holding Shift and I'm going to click, bypasses it, and then click it again. Or down here is this button that you can click to bypass. Okay, moving on, we have more parametric controls. Same thing. And then on the far right, we have a low pass filter. Again, lots of ranges. Same as the high pass filter. And when the spectrum's going, I mean, you can do it at any time, but when the spectrum's going, this is where this next control comes in handy. Now I'm going to click and drag up. And now I'm zoomed out. Now I'm going to click and drag down, and I'm zooming in. Now if I drag left, I'm still holding my mouse button down. If I drag left, look what happens. Very, very cool. And I can keep dragging wherever I want. If I wanted to go that way, and then I'm going up. That's right, up is zoom out. And so I want to zoom in on 1K, let's say. Can I do it that easily? Yep, there it is. I'm just going to click. I think if you click where you want to go and then do it that way, it's easier. Yep, kind of centers it around where you want to be. And then hit down to zoom in, and look at that. Very, very precise. Very nifty feature to have. Okay, over here we have output gain and the output meters right here. The phase shift knob. Now this is kind of interesting. I'm going to read this right from the manual because it explains it very concisely. In traditional, including analog hardware, equalizers, they not only change the frequency content, but also introduce a frequency-dependent delay, usually called phase shift. This adds a certain character to their sound and is especially notable when the processed signal is mixed in with other signals, like in a multi-track mix. This can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the quality of the EQ and your particular taste. At 0%, like that, Redline Equalizer becomes a linear phase EQ. At 100%, it introduces the same phase shift that an analog EQ would, while at 200%, well, you can guess the rest. So that's really cool to have. And it's what makes this equalizer stand out from other ones. A feature that I did miss, very important. This name up here, click it, and you have your presets. Now, And I'll be talking about this in another video, but I think presets on an equalizer and really presets in general are kind of a joke, but they kind of show you maybe what to aim for. But, you know, if you can avoid using them as much as possible, then I would definitely recommend not using presets. Now, it's great to have. You know, if you recorded an entire album the same way, like, you know, the same mics on the same drums, the same singer with the same microphone, then presets will come in handy. Absolutely. But to use presets that were given to you, the quote unquote factory default presets, that's a joke. But what I like is this one right here, EQ, and then choosing between the different equalizer models. Now, first we have, actually it's the first three. These are all Neve equalizers. This one is a solid state Logic 4000 mixer, which is a very famous mixer. The equalizer from the channels on that one. And this 550A and 550B are from the API console, the 1604, and nowadays you can buy them as outboard. You can buy the Neve ones outboard as well. And then we have the linear phase EQ, which basically just changes the controls over here, and it does a few other things. And then finally we have a vintage tube EQ, which I'm not sure if it's really based off of anything, but my guess is it shifts this. If I click it, it'll do it. Oh, no, it didn't. Just kept it at 100. But I think it would change. It didn't even do that. Wow. I'm not really sure what it does, but I mean, I know what it does, but I don't think it's based off of anything. See how that looks? And then if I change this to digital, see how that looks? And again, I change this. And all these curves were taken off of measurements that the software designer made himself, who unfortunately I found out passed away, I think a year or two ago. But his work lives on, which is great. And somebody else took over the company, but this is the original Redline Equalizer. I don't think anything's changed since like 2010. Maybe even 2009. But okay, next control. I guess I'll just go over here since all these controls are pretty much the same. As you saw me do, I clicked on this and you can change which equalizer curve it's being used. And that goes for any of these. If you click that, I've shown you that already, the octaves changer. And you can, you know, this does the same thing as holding Alt does. It just changes your Q, which, let me read this from the manual because, again, another concise explanation. The Q control determines the range of frequencies affected and can be used to widen or narrow the effect of a cut or boost. Q is also known as a bandwidth control. And that's exactly what it does. It makes things wider or narrower. Comes in handy big time. And it's a feature you don't see on a lot of budget gear, which is one reason that I don't like to use my equalizers on my mixing board while I'm recording. I usually just go straight into my converter. But that's a whole other lesson. So, moving on, we have this dynamic EQ switch, which is another great feature of this equalizer. If you've ever used a multi-band equalizer, it's kind of the same principle, where you can set a equalizer to, you know, some point, and it only affects that frequency once it goes past a certain point. Again, I'm just going to read this from the manual because it was really well written. Most of the time, you'll probably want to use the dynamic EQ functionality to lessen the effect of boost or cuts. As mentioned above, this corresponds to a positive setting. Occasionally, you may find use for negative settings, which result in the reverse effect. They increase a boost or cut when the input signal contains sufficient energy at that frequency. This allows you to, for example, take an entire drum mix and single out and fairly aggressively boost or cut a specific snare overtone without boosting the same frequency throughout. And it mentions right here that you can turn the dynamic display off, which is what I was trying to figure out earlier, to save on CPU load. Okay, I'm not going to go into any more detail about the controls because if you want to download this and download the manual, you can do that and figure it out then. What you want to know is how good does this plugin sound? And if you're one of those too long didn't watch types, it sounds great. But if you want to hear right now what it can do, I'm going to play that for you. So first things first, this track was recorded at Studio B. The vocals were recorded at Studio A because for whatever reason, Studio A is great for tracking vocals. I get a feeling why that is. One reason is vaulted ceiling, or should I say ceilings. But the other thing is it just doesn't have, it's that perfect isolation booth sound where it's not too muffled and there's not too many reflections. So trying to figure out, there we go. All right. So I'm going to bypass all the EQs right now. Oops.
4, 3, 9, 1, 1.
Now keep in mind, I did adjust all the faders down here to correspond to the equalizer that's on, so it's kind of not a fair test, but yeah, this is what it sounds like without EQ.
4, 3, 9, 1, 1.
And now this is what it sounds like with it on. Again, the only thing on these tracks are equalizers, which I'll show you individually after I'm done with this.
4, 3, 9, 1, 1. As we turn another page, keep your pockets full of change. There's a brand new day to ride into.
Okay, so let's go through these individually. Starting with, I'll start with vocals, I guess. All right, vocals were recorded. Let's just say the microphone that this vocalist used was definitely a bad choice. Now I've learned since then to use a complementary microphone for a vocalist and to try various microphones, not just throw up whatever one's laying around. And as a result of that, this track was very, very sibilant, which I'll show you right now. Let me solo this track. And let's see. That's right, I gotta bring... I have these different GUIs just so you guys aren't bored with the same one that I always have. But it ends up kind of messing me up. There. And really, if you're gonna make a custom theme, why would you not put the bypass FX button on here? It doesn't make any sense. And I think even if you expand it, it's not on there. You have to do it this way. Anyway, so this is bypassed. Oops. That's why I'm soloing the wrong track. I'm used to my vocal track being number 1, but my demo track, which I was just showing you, is this.
As we turn another page, keep your pockets full of change. There's a brand new day to ride into. Beyond the clouds of gray, where the silver linings.
Here, it's just too much. Too much like ear-piercing noise.
As we turn another page, keep your pockets full of. As we turn another page, keep your pockets full of change. There.
Now that I'm hearing that, maybe it's a little bit too much, but when it goes with the rest of the track, I like it. Now moving on, we have our first acoustic guitar. Which, you know, because this is a full track and there's a bass guitar, I like to high pass my low end, and I scooped out some mud, and then I brought up the track with a high shelf. Now here's the before track. Again, let me solo this, or it's soloed. Now you know what? I'm gonna bring up the other track since it was a stereo recording. And alright, I guess the best thing to do would just be to select these all again. Or you know what, I can do this. Click, click, and that should do it. There we go. Okay, so this is without EQ. And now when it turns green, when I click it again, it'll be on. I just wanted to brighten the acoustic guitar up, and I gotta tell you what, I think I have an earwax built up because I was wearing headphones before, and I took them off, and I'm feeling a little bit unbalanced. But anyway, that sounds good even with my muffled ear. I was mixing this before my ear became muffled. Now moving on. You know what, I'm just going to switch to my normal interface. This is really getting on my nerves. I like to show you guys different interfaces just so I'm not always on the same green one, but it's really messing up my demo here. So I'm going to go on to the next track, which is the electric guitar, clean electric guitar, which by the way, when I recorded this, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not even going to tell you how I recorded this. It's a little embarrassing. So let's just say I'm glad I got a usable sound out of it. So this is without EQ. Now here's with EQ. That's all I did. I just scooped a little bit of tone out of there that I didn't like. Now on the room mic, the room electric guitar, I did more work, but not too much. So combined, all right, moving on to the drums. Actually, the bass guitar, I'll do that first. So I just did a high pass at around 40 hertz. And then I did a boost right here to bring out some more of the edge or the string noise so that you can hear it when there's no subwoofer on. I'll bypass this and put it back in as well. Hear how it just brightens it up just a tiny bit. Good stuff. Helps it cut through the track a little bit more. And now we have kick drum. I did a lot on this track. So, first of all, notice even though it says up here 1073 EQ, that's not the case. I actually really like the API curves, or the 550A, which is an API equalizer. I brought up the low end. I sucked out this area, which was muddy probably because the kick drum just had too much muffling in there. That, or I should have positioned the mic differently or something. But whatever, I had to scoop it out. And then here, I added more attack to the beater. With the cut, you'll notice that I was using the digital equalizer curves. See, when I bypass those, what happens? And then these were all the API as well. So here it is with it off. And here it is on. It's amazing how the rest of the drum kit, you can still hear it even though it's a kick drum. Okay, so overhead mics. I'll just solo both of these. Yeah, so basically I just high passed it. The settings are the same on both. That's typically what I do. So I'll just close this out, but I wanted to show you that they were different, or they were the same. So basically, I put a high pass filter somewhere between 300 and actually it's like 300 and 400 hertz, and put a high shelf right here, as you can see, and that just increases the cymbal, gives it more clarity, and gets rid of the room, because Studio B is an actual basement. You know, that's the joke. Studio B, studio basement. And so I typically like to just have the overhead cymbal sound with a little bit of snare in there, and it usually works out pretty well. Makes a significant difference. Moving on, snare drum didn't do anything too. I actually liked it. Nothing wrong with that, and actually I'm getting most of my drum sound from the overheads anyway. So, hi-hat mic. That's what I did, just high passed it. I'll show you what happens when you do that. See, I didn't do any boosting of anything. All I did was cut out the frequencies, and it opens up the rest of the sound for the main hi-hat sound to come through. And the tom drums are the last two tracks. I'll just solo both of these as well. So I sucked out some of the mud on the rack tom, and then on the floor tom I added low end, sucked out muddiness at the around the 200 range, and then added a little bit of point on the at about 5K. Still not a perfect noise, or still not a perfect sound, but better than it was before. So here's what they are without the EQ. By the way, the way I normally get tom drum tone is by selecting this, putting my actually it's already on because that was the last thing I was doing before I made this video. I put this repeat button on, which normally if you have it off, this is what happens. It just keeps playing, but if you turn it on and have this portion selected, so I'm going to turn them on, turn the plugins on. Just adds, you know, like I said, more point. It cuts through the track better. And that's it. I showed you everything that I did. And again, here's the before and after. I'm going to switch them on while it's playing.
As we turn another page, keep your pockets full of change. There's a brand new day to ride into. Beyond the clouds of gray, where the silver linings fade, all the signs align to lead us through. The autumn leaves look.
Now, if it sounds that good with just equalization on, imagine how good it will sound once some compression's on, once some reverb's on, some delay, all that good stuff. This track's going to sound fantastic. So this has been Adam. Oh, forgot to mention, the Redline Equalizer can be had for the low price of $169 at the time of this recording. You must go to 112decibels.com. That's 112db.com. I don't believe they sell this anywhere else. And if you don't have any other equalizer plugins, or if your collection is lacking, then this is a great workhorse piece of software. And another thing I like about it is it doesn't require a dongle. I already own an iLock 2, but they can be a pain in the ass. So all this requires is a key file, which is great. And the key file is not affected if you reinstall software in your computer or change a video card, anything like that. It's not one of those type of key files. And here's the best part. You'll notice that when I was just playing this, let me open up one of these. See, it's registered to me down here, the demo. You notice the demo had no noise burst. It didn't drop out at any point. They give you a 60-day unrestricted trial to demo this piece of software. So you have 2 months to see if you like this plugin. And I like it. I think it's going to be on one of my lists. I already have a lot of equalizers, and I don't really have the money to be spending. But I'll tell you what, the gear acquisition syndrome is kicking in. And I think sometime around Christmas, I'll be picking this thing up. Because although I do have a lot of equalizers, I ended up not getting the Waves hybrid EQ just because I just couldn't, I didn't have the money at the time. Actually, I think I was saving up so I could go to New York City for AES. But this plugin, I tell you what, you can boost the hell out of this plugin, and it still sounds good. That's actually one of the claims on the website, is that you can keep boosting the lows and keep boosting the highs, and it doesn't fall apart. Actually, I'll show you that right now. On the acoustic guitar, before I was going to end this video, but I want to show you this. I'll make this mono. Okay, so this is the high shelf. The high shelf starts at about 3.8 kilohertz. So I'm going to just boost this. That's pretty amazing. At this point, most equalizers would start falling apart. 14 decibels of high shelving boost at that frequency range would absolutely destroy most equalizers. And that's still, although I wouldn't boost that high, that still doesn't sound that bad. I mean, if you boosted a hardware equalizer, that's what it would sound like. Something pretty similar. And that has to do with a feature, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, it's called decramped or decramping. And this is a legitimate issue that I saw on a message board. People were complaining about software equalizers just, sounding terrible. And a lot of it had to do with decramping or them being cramped. And the manual goes more into this, but I don't know anything about that, except they say that decramping helps by having no loss of content at high frequencies. And this allows for high transparency when phase shift and saturation are low or off. All I know is you can boost a lot and it doesn't sound like shit. Now that sounds pretty bad, but we're getting really high up there now. I'll boost this really high just to see what it'll do. Okay, so it went to 24 decibels. I'm gonna back off on the output gain and play this. Pretty amazing. It still doesn't sound that bad. So there you go. I would definitely check it out and consider it for workhorse duties. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com.